In the last lesson, we took a look at how creating multiple instances of the logger class can cause problems within our application. In this lesson, we're going to go ahead and fix those problems by implementing a singleton. So within your exercise files, under Chapter 2, Lesson 2, within the Start folder, and the logger.js file, let's go ahead and modify this file to export a singleton instead of a logger. So on line 17, I'm just going to come in here and add a new class called singleton. So this class is only going to allow us to create one instance of the logger. Anytime we need that instance, we're going to retrieve it through a getInstance method. So let's go ahead and add a constructor to our singleton class. And what we want to do within this constructor is we want to check and see if an instance has already been created. So I'm going to save the instance directly to the class. So if there's not a singleton instance, then we want to create one. So if we don't have one, then the singleton instance will equal new logger. So that's our singleton. And it will only allow us to create one instance whenever we instantiate this singleton class. So the next thing we're going to do for a classical singleton is actually return that instance using a getInstance method. And what we can do within this method is return our singleton.instance. There we go. So this class only allows us to instantiate one logger. And then using the getInstance method, we can return that logger to any file that wants to use it. So let's go ahead and go into our store. We need to modify line 3, where we create a new instance of our logger class to have a .getInstance chained on that call. So this will return our single instance. And then within the shopper.js, we need to do the same thing, also on line 3, .getInstance. And now both the store and the shopper should be using the same single instance of the logger. Within the index.js file, we'll also chain on a .getInstance. And now all three of these files should be using the exact same instance of the logger. So we can check this by going to run our application. So let's go out to the terminal and node index.js. And now we see the same output. We see 4 logs starting the app coming from our index file, new shopper coming from the shopper file, new store coming from the store file, and then finished config coming from the index. And we also see the correct amount of logs within our logger instance. So it says that we have 4 logs total, and it shows us that all 4 of these logs have made it, even though we're using the logger throughout multiple files. In the last lesson, we solved the problem of creating multiple instances of the logger class throughout our application by creating a singleton class, and then exporting that class to make sure that we only use one instance of the logger. Implementing the getInstance method in a singleton class is pretty typical for an object-oriented programming language. It's just fine to implement the singleton this way within Node.js. It's also nice because it tells other developers that the logger is a singleton. However, there is an easier and more typical solution for singletons in Node.js, and that's simply to export the instance from the Node.js module. So within our exercise files under Chapter 2, Lesson 3, I'm going to come into my logger.js file and just implement the singleton an easier way by removing the class, or the need to export a single class. And now on line 19, where I export this module, I'm going to just go ahead and export a new instance of the logger. The idea here is that when we run this file, it will run once, create the new instance of the logger, and save it in the cache. That means that Node.js will automatically handle exporting the same instance of the logger to every other module that wants to consume it. So let's just go ahead and modify our store.js file. We are going to get rid of line 3, where we create the instance of the logger here, because we're going to import it directly from our logger module. So I'll go ahead and give that in lowercase l so that it matches our logger on line 10. Same thing within our shopper.js file. Let's get rid of the call to new logger and go ahead and give that a little lowercase l, and we will get that instance from our logger module. And then finally, the same thing with the index. I'm going to go ahead and import a lowercase logger. So we are importing the instance, and then I'm getting rid of the line where we created the new logger instance. So I'll go ahead and save this, and we should have the exact same results without the need to create an extra class. So let's go ahead and test this out. I'll come over to the terminal, node index.js, and we see that we have the exact same results. We're using one logger instance. We're saving all of the logs, no matter whether they were logged from shopper, store, or our main application.